That's the team. Hey, thank you everyone in the audience for joining us this afternoon for at least afternoon East Coast time. Key factors to making CMMC affordable. We're going to be focusing not just on the tools that are associated with CMMC, but specifically how you can use them to make this journey more affordable. But first, let's get introductions. I'm Vince Petracca, the Vice President of Sales and Partnerships at Prevail. And happy to introduce our participants as way of Joe Devine, Katie Dodson, and Adam Glover. Joe, do you want to kick off with a quick intro?
Sure. Thanks, Vince. My name is Joe Devine. I'm the founder and president of Axiotrope. We are a cybersecurity compliance company focused on CMMC. We've been working in CMMC since we started the company in 2021. We've been an RPO since then, and we're also a C3PAO. So we advise and assess. Our team, though, has knowledge going back to 2004, my previous company, where we did a lot of NIST-based work around HIPAA. But we're happy to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Katie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Dodson. I am president and lead CCA of Hive Systems Defense Solutions, which is a C3PAO. Similar to Joe, we also do offer readiness and consulting support for CMMC as well.
Adam, go ahead.
Yeah. And Adam Glover, I'm a director of here at Inside Assurance and a CMMC practice lead, amongst other things. But we are also a C3PAO and an RPO as well. So we do both assessments and consulting. I've been working with CMMC since about 2016. I previously came from higher education before moving into this role. So looking forward to talking with everyone.
Very good. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, this afternoon. This is a very important topic and one that's very close to our heart at Prevail, quite honestly, because keeping CMMC affordable has been something we've been focused on for over 5 years now. And we every day we're thinking about how we can make the process more streamlined, more affordable, so that small, medium businesses in the defense industrial base can achieve CMMC certification without it adversely impacting their business. You know, DoD estimates in some of the paperwork that they put out assume that DIB contractors would have to spend over $100,000 to become CMMC compliant. I've seen industry estimates that range from $50,000 to $200,000, even for smaller DIB contractors, right? That's a lot. We have to all of us are part of this. And we all have to be part of making these solutions more cost effective for contractors out there. It's really critical. So let's get into this with specific topics. The first topic that I want to bring up, and Katie, I'm going to ask you to talk about it first, is such a key one. And one, again, that's very important for us at Prevail because we're an enclave solution primarily. But, you know, scoping your compliance boundary. Tell me about how you can make this that companies can make this more affordable with that topic.
Yeah, absolutely, Vince. So what we typically see when we come in to help a company who's trying to figure out how to get ready for CMMC is they think that they just have to bring the entire company up to CMMC compliance. And the very first question we always ask is, how much of your business is DoD? If all of it is DoD, then sure, we might need to bring your entire company into scope. But in most cases, companies have a DoD line of business and a commercial line of business. And so we always emphasize scoping as small as possible. See where your CUI data flows are and what the business processes are associated with CUI and make that your boundary. Put it in an enclave if you can. It's the easiest way to scope as small as possible and to define that boundary in a way that is very clean, doesn't bleed over into your commercial practice. It also has the lowest impact on your actual team because those who are doing the commercial processes now don't have to worry about CMMC compliance and changing the way that they're doing things to make sure that you are compliant. But it's scoping as small as possible is the best way to keep costs down and to keep the impact to your business and your people and your processes as small as possible. And it also just makes for a cleaner and easier assessment process to help you get certified as well.
Great message right off the bat, right? Your whole organization in many cases does not need to be CMMC compliant, and every additional employee and every additional device that's in your compliance boundary is going to increase the costs associated with CMMC compliance, not just in year one, but throughout your life cycle of compliance. Joe, what other thoughts would you have around this?
So First of all, just to reemphasize what Katie said, I think it's so important that the digital side of this is where a lot of your costs are going to come year to year. So the number of users you can minimize that have to see the CUI, it's going to have a direct effect on how much you're going to spend every year.
Yeah.
And also, how many places do you store that CUI? If you can consolidate it into one place, then that's going to reduce your scope of your assessment. So not only your implementation costs going to be lower, and your preparation cost is going to be lower, but your actual C3PO assessment is going to be smaller in scale and will be less expensive as well. But the other place people sometimes don't think about is CUI comes both digital and physical. And you want to take a look at where is your physical CUI living? Do you have more than you really need? Do you need all that you're producing? And how many places does it have to flow both within and maybe outside of your company? Do you need to be sending CUI to your vendors? Or is it possible they could do their work without having to see those drawings and specs? And internally, does every function need it? Does every person need it? The more you can limit that scope, the easier it's going to be to prepare for your assessment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like simple things. Everyone who is inside the compliance boundary, who's part of your scope, is going to have to go through CMMC training, right? And training specifically every year, right? Significant training. Anyone who isn't in that boundary, isn't going to have to do that. I know that's one little simple thing, but it's just an example of what you're facing with this. Adam, anything to add?
Not, I mean, not a ton. I mean, Katie and Joe did a great job covering the major points. I would say one of the only real times we've seen instances where the entire organization needs to be in scope is when you're doing some like manufacturing or something like that. That's a real classic example. Otherwise, if you're operating in a digital world or like Katie mentioned, two sides of business, you have a government side and a commercial side, doing an enclave and limiting your scope is the best way to go. These controls are very rigorous, so you don't want to have everyone exposed to them unnecessarily. You don't want to expose HR and finance and all of these other departments that may not need it to such rigorous controls. As the old saying goes, you know, operations and security don't mix well together, right? So security naturally impedes operations. So in order to minimize the impact on operations, you want to make that scope as tight as possible and do that enclave approach whenever you can.
Yeah, and as Joe was saying, it's even more than just the user group, because you may be a company of one person, right? But then it's a question of exactly how can you scope down where you handle CUI and how you share CUI that could enable you to simplify your operations, as well as the documentation that you need to support your compliance. So those are all things to take into consideration. Okay.
Definitely.
Very good. We could talk about that one for a long time, I know, but I want to move on to some different topics while we have the time today. So, another key thing that we're seeing out there is in terms of saving money, making this process more affordable, is managing the compliance journey, the project management of the compliance journey. And that involves, in many cases, some prepackaged documentation. For instance, Prevail provides that for our system, especially if it's being used in coordination with Microsoft Office 365 Commercial. But above and beyond that, there's many tools out there, GRC or governance, risk, and compliance tools that you can use. And it costs a little more to get these, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Adam, if you want to kick off with, what it means and why it can save money for the organization during the compliance journey.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, GRC tools are great in the respect that they really help to keep you organized, right? Not only do they help keep you organized in the moment, but then on an ongoing basis, they're really great about sending you reminders and alerts to say, hey, you need to do this activity, you need to do that activity. So it keeps you on track, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. So there's definitely benefit to that. And from an auditor, from an assessor standpoint, as a C3PO, when we come in, if you have a GRC platform, it's great because we know the evidence is going to be there. We can get access to whatever platform you're using, go in, leverage that to the extent possible. And that really helps with the pre-assessment phase during the determination of, hey, are you ready to proceed with the assessment or not? If we go in there and you have like, I don't know, 40 artifacts, it's probably not looking good, right? You're probably not ready. If we go in there and we see, I don't know, 150, 200 artifacts, whatever it is, that's a pretty good indication that you're on the right path and you're kind of where you need to be.
Right.
One thing I will caution about GRC tools, so they have a lot of great benefits, as I just kind of summarized there. One thing I will caution about them as it relates specifically to CMMC, it's a little bit different than some other frameworks. Like if you're working with SOC 2 or something like that, the auditor can oftentimes rely entirely on the GRC platform. With CMMC, during the assessment process, we can't rely on the platform entirely. So as we're going through phase 2, i.e. the assessment phase, and we're doing the walkthroughs and the interviews and things like that, the SMEs will still be required to be on the call. You'll still be required to answer the questions and show us the evidence live outside of the GRC tool. So having the tool is great and it does help with a lot of things, but getting through that assessment phase or that assessment week is still critical, and that's not really something that we can rely on for CMMC.
Right, right. Joe, what other benefits are you seeing from customers or clients of yours that are using GRC tools?
Yeah, first of all, Vince, we won't take on advisory without a GRC tool.
Nice.
I think it's, you can do it with spreadsheets, but I don't want to. So everything that Adam mentioned about the compliance side, totally agree with. But some other benefits, I mean, different GRC tools are better or different features than others. So one of the real benefits I like is the collaboration communication part of it during implementation, during getting ready. And even past that, some of the tools include really nice dashboards. So you can bring on people from the management team, from if they have an MSP, if you're in your MSSP or us, the advisors, everybody can kind of see the same stuff. You can build out project plans and POAM items from unmet controls, and it just makes everybody kind of get on the same page. And some also keep track of documentation, like you mentioned, your SSPs, your policies, your procedures, any lists or evidence that you want to maintain. It all goes in one place. I think communication and collaboration for me during and through the assessment is really a key point.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I just say that Prevail realized how important this is to our client base. We have over 2,000 DIB contractor customers, and we provide a lot of compliance documentation. We realized it was so much documentation that was difficult to manage as piece parts. And by just a few months ago now, we've added a customized CMMC Level 2 GRC tool to our offering. But of course, we support many others that are out there in the marketplace as well. But because it's so important just to be able to manage your content, track where you are, what's completed, what's not, et cetera, through the process, it makes it much more manageable for many of our customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's go on to next topic. Joe, I want to give this one to you. This is around the remediation plan. You go through, you do your analysis up front, what we do today, what we need to do, tomorrow. How does the remediation plan into affordability?
Yeah, so building a remediation plan, by the time you get to that point, you've already gone through discovery. Hopefully you've done your scoping and you've minimized your footprint for both your digital and your physical CUI, and you've picked a technology platform like Prevail or another that is going to be your primary digital storage, secure location for your digital CUI. Once you have that, that's pretty much then going to determine at least those implementation costs, which is a big chunk of what you're going to be doing. But there's still remaining projects. Especially if there's physical CUI in place, there's remaining projects, and it's important to work through, upfront all of those unmet controls. There's a lot of controls that are not met from the enclave solution. So, it's important to make sure that you quantify all those, you put them together into a plan. And sometimes your GRC tool will help you. Sometimes the GRC tool will identify all your open POAMs. You can identify projects, assign all of your POAMs to a project. When you think you're done, you can kind of look and see if there's any unassigned POAMs that need to be accounted for. And then typically what should happen then, once you have your projects put together, you review that with the OSC, with the organization seeking certification. and you put a budget together and you put together a plan of action. Is this something you want to get done in 4 months or 8 months or a year? And then you scope out your who's responsible for each of those items and attack those according to each client's ability to budget over a period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joe. Interest of time, I want to move on to another topic. This one is an interesting one, kind of like a GRC tool. It also costs some extra money, but I'm confident that you're going to suggest that it's going to save money in the long run in most cases. So, Katie, if you just want to kick us off, tell us about the mock assessment or pre-assessment or gap assessment, the one you would do just prior to going for a full C3PAO formal CMMC level 2 assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I get a lot of questions about what's the difference between a gap assessment and a mock assessment. They are very different things. So the gap assessment is, I have no idea where to start. This is what I think I want to do. Will it work? Will it make sense? And it's more of a discussion, and it helps to, like what Joe was just talking about, it helps to identify where are we lacking and what are potential solutions that we can implement, create a remediation plan, and move forward. The mock assessment is a practice run. It is what you do before you go into your certification assessment to make sure that your team is trained on what to expect from the interview process, that you have evidence for everything. To Adam's point from earlier, that if you have a GRC tool, you've got artifacts mapped to everything, that it all makes sense, you're not missing anything. And it basically lets you determine that you have 110 before you sit in front of your assessor. And I do recommend a mock assessment to everyone, especially this first time around going into a CMMC assessment, because there are still a lot of gray areas and a lot of interpretation that is different between C3PAOs and the ecosystem. And what you think is compliant might not necessarily be up to the standards of the C3PAO. And you never want to be in a position where you just straight to the certification assessment, and now you get a 3-pointer or a 5-pointer or something that cannot be placed on a POAM, and you need to do the assessment completely from scratch all over again at the C3PAO's discretion of when they can fit you into their schedule. So we always recommend doing a mock assessment. Many C3PAOs, I think all three of us here offer mock assessments. Some of us bundle them with the certification assessment. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Readiness partners do it as well. But I always recommend doing a mock assessment because it will let you know, oh, this would have been a fail, or this did pass and is up to snuff and we're good to go. Or even if nothing else, it trains your team on what to expect so that they are going in without going in blind to your actual certification assessment and are set up for success and can streamline it and get it all knocked out and done. But the mock assessment goes a very long way. More than 2/3 of our clients have opted for a mock assessment. Some of them have needed it and would not have passed without it. So it's really a critical step, and I highly encourage.
So maybe counterintuitive, you're going to spend a few dollars, but
Yep.
it's a very important insurance policy that you're much more likely to get that 110 the first time, and that will save you money overall.
Yes.
Joe, would you agree?
Yeah, and I agree with everything Katie said. I just would add, there's a good decision, an important decision to make about who's going to do your mock. Do you want your C3PO assessor to do it? And that way the assessment's going to be less expensive eventually. The C3PO will be reduced because that C3PO will be familiar with your assessment already, having gone through your documentation, gone through 110 with you, but they can't advise you. So if you haven't had an advisor working with you to this point, sometimes we advise folks to have somebody else, and we have other partners that we would refer them to do a mock assessment before they use us for their formal assessment, so that C3PO can advise them. And if they're not close, sometimes it's good to have that do the full assessment, the mock assessment rather, and then get advice. But it's also advantageous. We also do, as Katie mentioned, we do a mock, and that does reduce the cost pretty significantly of the C3PAO having had our lead assessor and our team go through it already.
Interesting. So different ways to handle that. Maybe someone who's already working with an RPO or something like that may follow the path, what you said, where the C3PO does the mock and then does the extra assessment. If you haven't worked with an RPO along the way, then you might consider doing your mock assessment with someone who can help remediate any issues with it before you go to the C3PO.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Adam, any further input on that?
No, I mean, I would just echo, what everyone said. To Katie's point, I think we probably had 85%, if I had to put a number on it, of our clients have opted to do the mock. It's great in the fact that, you know, it provides a bit of an insurance policy for you, so you're not going blind and potentially risking failing the assessment outright. Um,
Hmm.
as we've kind of talked about, CMMC is a pretty expensive ecosystem. So the last thing you want to do, schedule the assessment, go through it, fail it for whatever reason. I mean, you could have 105 out of 110 and still fail. Fail it for whatever reason. And then not only do you have the problem of, all right, well, now I've got to repay the fees all over again, but now I have to find a C3PAO and get back on the schedule again. And as C3POs are booked out, that could easily take 6 months in this landscape. So for a lot of folks, it's just not a risk they're willing to accept.
Yeah.
But it really does depend on your comfort level and your risk posture as an organization.
De-risk that. Very good. Excellent. Let's move on. I think we have time for one more decent topic here. So I really want, because we've got such a wealth of C3PO expertise here, I would love to hear from this group. What our audience should be looking for when they select a C3PO assessor, right? There's a number of them now that are authorized. Is it over 100 now that have been authorized?
I think it's around 80 change,
Or
maybe
80, closing in
85.
on 100. And we know how important they are to the community. We work with many of them. We appreciate those relationships. But what does a standard, DIB contractor out there who wants to start lining this up, whether it's 2 months, 6 months down the line, what should they be looking for to make sure that this is the right marriage for them, the right fit? Adam, do you want to kick that one off?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a few different things, right? One is like personality, right? Everyone has a different, type of person that they're going to work better with. So that's key. But on top of that, I think it's the C3PAO's understanding of whatever technology you're using. So as an example, like, here we're talking about Prevail. If you use Prevail and your C3PAO has no idea what Prevail is, that could be a red flag, right? So that's a really critical component of selecting a C3PAO, making sure they understand your technology, making sure they're asking the right questions. If you're getting, people that it maybe might not be asking any scoping questions, or might not be asking any upfront questions that lead you to believe that they're not invested in your environment or in you as a client, that could be a problem. If you're getting wildly extravagant quotes one way or the other, I would say generally speaking in the market, people are pretty competitive, right? So if you're getting, just say you get 4 quotes, and 3 of them are within $5,000 or $10,000 of one and of each other, and then one's either super high or super low, that could probably be a red flag as well. So those are all some of the biggest things that I think we look out for. But really, it comes down to relationships, partnerships, and understanding of the technology that you're using. Those are the critical things.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the comment about, your experience with the platform that you're working with. That is such a large factor. I know for Prevail, so many of the controls are met or supported by the Prevail system. They're working with a C3PO who doesn't understand the Prevail security model, how we've set up our system to meet the controls specifically, would be a learning curve for them, if nothing else. And that's probably going to cost you money and time. So we call it use a proven provider. Those folks are on our website. The C3POs, all of the C3POs here are on the Prevail website as partners of Prevail, and certainly hope to expand that in the future. Just because we want the community, both RPO and C3PO, to be familiar with the Prevail technology, the systems, how it works, so that we can help our customers get through this whole process a little bit easier. Joe, anything to add?
Yeah, the technology is super important, as you both mentioned, but you also want to, and the personality. I think you also want to, like, you choose any partner. Is that C3PO familiar with your kind of business? Are you in manufacturing and they only have done service type work? Are they geographically native? Isn't the most important thing, but it could be, because there's be some travel costs involved, and there's I think the size of your organization also matters. Are they doing enterprise level companies and you're a 30-person manufacturing? You probably want to find somebody and that's not going to be walking into your greasy CNC machine shop, no, and I love those places, so I'm not throwing any shade at all. But you don't want somebody who's going to be looking at you for the first time. And to the technology point, you don't want somebody learning on your dime. You want to make sure that
Yes.
they've already had experience with what you look like, as a potential assessee to them,
Yeah, yeah, and potentially familiar with some of the documentation that you're bringing along for the
Yeah,
ride, right?
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Katie, you can have the last word on this one.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, seconding both Adam and Joe's points, most of the time people come in asking about when are you free and what is the cost? But you do want to interview your C3PAOs because not all C3PAOs are the same. There is a
Yeah.
very vast difference in how we interpret the cap and how we interpret the control requirements, what we will allow you to correct during your assessment, what additional evidence we will accept. So you should be interviewing your C3PAOs a little bit for that culture fit, but also to make sure that if you have a unique situation for meeting a control requirement, that it would be acceptable to your C3PAO. Last thing you want is to pick somebody based on just cost and schedule and then get in and
Yeah.
find out that they won't even let you fix documentation during an assessment or something like that, because there are C3PAOs out there that are like that. So definitely interview your C3PAOs, ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to ask lots of questions. If you hear something from one C3PAO and you want to go back to a previous one and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Do it, because it's really critical and really important to have an understanding of what your C3PAO thinks about control interpretations and what they will accept during your assessment.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I
Yeah.
think what I took from that is don't let just cost and schedule make your decision. That would be short-sighted and could certainly affect the affordability of the long-term process. And I know that's what we're here talking about, but you need to pick someone that's going to fit you again, because your goal is to get through this with that 110 the first time and set yourself up for long-term success with your CMMC journey into the years to come. Find the right fit and that right relationship. And it's out there because there's lots of options. There's lots of great options, as we know personally.